Hola y buenos días mis amigos, gracias por regresar para otro día de español. Espero que esta lección te ayuda mucho. I hope this lesson really helps you guys out a lot. So this is part 2 of a video where we talked a little bit about using the present to talk in the future. Y lo que vamos a hacer es mejorar en esa misma cosa. We're going to try and improve on the exact same thing. And vamos a usar verbos en vez de necesitar, los verbos acabar de, ir a, tener que, desear y poder. We're going to use these verbs down here to try and accomplish a similar concept. Now, if we weren't doing the beginner's version of this, what we would see are different conjugations for every tense that we're trying to describe. So, in the present tense, ya saben que vamos a decir necesito, necesitas, necesita, necesitamos, necesitáis, y necesitan. But we haven't gone over yet how to talk in the preterite and these conjugations that you will see here. So, cuando ves necesité, it says I needed. Y cuando digo necesitaré, it could mean I will need. Necesitaste would be you needed, y necesitarás would be you will need. And these conjugations, they go on and on. And so learning Spanish is all about getting new conjugations and being creative the way we have and how you can express what you're trying to say. Now, with that being said, what we are about to learn is not this. We are not going to learn this. What we're going to do is find a way to be able to communicate and use what we already are good at to try and express some of our thoughts and feelings in the future and in the past. Entonces, chicos, lo que sí vamos a hacer hoy es usar algo muy semejante a lo que hicimos en el último video. So what we are going to try and do today is something really similar to something we did in the last video, or maybe a previous video. And the sentence structure that we're going to work with is very similar to how we were able to say necesitamos preguntar una pregunta, for we need to ask a question, and necesitamos contestar una pregunta. Notice how initially we conjugated to need because we do need, but we're saying to answer or to ask, and it's staying in the infinitive. So we're going to stick with the same sentence structure, and instead of us using a word like necesitar, what we're going to do instead is we're going to try and use the verbs on the following page that are ir a, acabar de, tener que, desear, and poder. And what we would do is we would take one of these verbs and replace necesitar in the same form. So we could also say vamos a preguntar una pregunta. And where we have used necesitamos, we now have vamos a. So, para hacer eso, necesitamos algunas palabras diferentes. Esas aquí. We're going to need these words right here. And we're going to try and say some things like we just had a quesadilla from Los Portales. They're going to arrive at 11 tomorrow. We're not going to be in Spanish class tomorrow. And what would you like to have for dinner? I would like to eat an entire pizza. That one sounds great. So when we look at these, notice that I'm conjugating we just in the present, and then the had a quesadilla part is what's in the past. They are in the present, going to arrive at 11 tomorrow is in the future. So we're going to try and do something like that in Spanish, and knowing what we know about verbs, we're going to be able to communicate a lot of cool things. So, cuando miran esos verbos, van a conjugar acabar. Van a conjugar acabar, pero no de. We're going to conjugate acabar and not de. So we would get acabo de to say I just, acabas de, you just, acaba de, he just, acabamos de, we just, acabáis de, y acaban de. So acabo de would mean I just. So acabo de dormir would mean I just slept. Acabo de comer, what we're doing in this chapter, would be I just ate. And I don't have to conjugate comer as comí in order to communicate the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and conjugate the rest of these very quickly. And poder, if you're in my class, is a little extra for you, but something I know a lot of you all have been wanting to use. So I'm going to go ahead and conjugate this real quick, and then we will try and use the right verbs to solve some of these fun sentences. All right. So cuando digo yo voy a, which means I am going to, y tú vas a would mean you are going to. Él or ella o usted va a. Nosotros vamos a. Vosotros vais a. Y ellos, ellas, ustedes van a. Entonces, cuando miramos así, es la misma palabra que ir que ya vimos. When we look here, it's the same word as ir in some of my older videos, where we're just adding in a to talk in the future. Voy a, vas a, va a, vamos a, vais a, van a. Tener que, we already learned tener in el capítulo 2 when we talked about possession. So, when we do tener, we're going to say tengo, just like in chapter 2, but now we have que afterwards. Tienes que, tiene que, nosotros tenemos que, vosotros tenéis que, y ellos tienen. Hey, how did that happen? Y tienen que. All right. So, the next one we have is a very useful word. It looks like the word desire, and you can use it as to wish for. I remember when I was in first or second grade, we had a reading book, and it was called deseos, which meant wishes, and that's something that was really vivid to me. But desear means to wish for or want for, and this is kind of the word you want to use when you're out ordering some food somewhere. You could say can I or I want to, but it's not really the best way or the más bien educado manera to order things and ask someone to make something for you. So we're going to start with this one, and it's a simple AR, deseo, deseas, desea, deseamos, deseáis y desean. Entonces aquí, cuando usamos el palabra poder, es una palabra de extra crédito para mis amigos quien quiere saber un poquito más, pero voy a explicar esto un poquito más en el próximo capítulo de cuando hablamos de los verbos de cambio radical. Entonces, cuando conjugamos poder, decimos yo puedo, or I can. También tenemos tú puedes, él o ella o usted puede. Nosotros podemos. Vosotros podéis. Y ellos, ellas, ustedes pueden. Entonces pueden ver que eso es una conjugación un poquito diferente. En vez de solo cambiar al final de la palabra con el o, es, os, eis y el en, lo que tenemos es un cambio en la raíz de la palabra. Aquí en la primera parte, la raíz es donde cambia. Entonces el o es ahora el ue y aquí ue. Hay otra palabra que conjugamos así, es la palabra tener, y es el diferente es una diferente tipo. All right, guys, maybe you understood that, maybe not. I will talk more about this verb in a video in chapter 5. Cuando decimos we just had, we are going to need two things here. Un verbo de aquí y un verbo que ya sabemos. We're going to need a verb from up here, and we're going to need a verb that we've already learned. So we're going to see which one of these is actually being used here. We just is acabar de. And which form of acabar de do we need? We can see that here we have we, which is not yo, not tú, not él o ella, but nosotros. So our sentence will start with nosotros acabamos de or acabamos de. So nosotros acabamos de. Now, had looks a lot like tener, and we'll leave it like that for now without talking about why we will use tomar or comer here, because this does have tener now in the past. Una quesadilla de los Portales. And if you live in Wilmington and you haven't tried Los Portales, please go and check it out. Es uno de mis lugares favoritos. So they are going to arrive at 11 tomorrow. This time we're talking about to be going to. So it's not acabar today. We need ir a. So we're going to conjugate ir a for they. We get van a. We want to be careful when we use a third or sixth person in our conjugations because it's not very clear who they are. In our original sentence, it isn't either. So we're going to continue on. Van a llegar a las 11 mañana. So here we have they are going to, and we're choosing our verb to arrive. It's the form that hasn't been conjugated. And we're saying a las 11 mañana. Okay, recuerdan cuando vas a decir at 11, if you're talking about time, es importante decir a las 11. Si solo dices a 11, if you only say a 11, then it's not specific that you're talking about the hour. La próxima es we are not going to be. Entonces necesitamos el verbo ir a, y en el negativo, where we're saying not going to be, y es para nosotros, es for we. So vamos a decir nosotros no vamos a, we are not going to, y aquí to be es either ser or estar. We're talking about where we're going to be, so we're going to say estar en la clase de español mañana. La próxima dice, what would you like to have for dinner? What would you like to have for dinner? We have desear is our word to desire or to wish for, and this is the word we're going to use when we're talking about what we want to get from a restaurant or somewhere like that. So what would you like to have for dinner? We need the question word que. Then we need the verb desear, deseas. So we have what do you want to have? And then we're going to choose a word, what would you like? And we're going to choose to have. The word for what you're going to have is tomar. Now, if you said tener that works here, that makes sense. You should say tomar para cena. It could be tener para cena. It could be comer para cena. You guys, I want you to know that all of these things, tomar para cena, tener para cena, or comer para cena, could be replaced with just cenar. So, ¿qué deseas cenar? What would you like to have for dinner? Let's get our interrogativo y el tilde donde debería ser. So here we're using the word desear, and we're combining it with tomar or tener or comer. All right, our last one is I would like to eat an entire pizza. So again, we're using this verb desear, and it specifically says to eat, which we know from our last video is comer. So we're going to go and say, yo deseo comer una pizza entera. So it is really important to notice that the verb that we're conjugating is one of the 5 that I've given you here. Or and there are other verbs that could fit here, like necesitar, we learned in a previous video. But the thing that we're trying to do in the future, or that we've just done in the past, remains in the infinitive. So the best way to remember this is that we conjugate for the action that's being taken, not for what we're going to do or just have done. So in our first one, we just had, we use acabamos de to show who just did something, but tener or comer or tomar stays in the infinitive unconjugated form. Van a llegar, they are, but it's to arrive. They're going to, but it's to arrive. Llegar. No vamos, A estar. A lot of students, as they try this, and when I'm correcting sentences here, a lot of people want acabamos de tenemos, van a llegan, nosotros no vamos a estamos, and that would say we are not going to, we are. And that's not what we want to say here. So we want to be really careful to be sure that we conjugate just one of these verbs in situations like this and not the preceding action that you're trying to use in the future or past. I hope this really helps you guys. If you have any questions, let me know or find me on Reddit, and I'll be glad to help you out. Adios.